Hey everybody, let's see, finish, not exactly sure what to do here, let's see. I guess I'm live. I am not terribly well schooled in the technology behind Facebook Live, but I'm going to do my best here. So let's see here, we have a few people. Let's see if we have, oh, I don't want to do that. Okay, thanks. Thanks from the Nutritional Therapy Association. So everybody can see me, everybody can hear me, right? Yeah? Looking for some feedback here, hopefully. All right, let's see. Not exactly sure where to look for the comments and stuff here, but at any rate, so I am Nora Gedgaudas, and I see a lot of little hearts and thumbs up. That's really cool. Okay, all right, I'm seeing some feed now. That's excellent. Yeah, I'm a nutritional therapist, among other things, and I've been at this for quite a long time now. I can't quite recall. I think it was 2005 when I took the NTA program, and the reason I took the NTA program, I had already pretty much written kind of the first manuscript draft of Primal Body, Primal Mind at the time. And I was pretty dialed into a lot of the information that, some of the information anyway that I know now. But I really, when somebody pointed out the NTA to me, I was so impressed with the content of the program as opposed to a lot of the conventional forms of nutritional and dietitian training, that I thought I have to support these guys. I really want to just take this as a way of supporting and seeing what they're doing, and it was a great experience, and it opened a lot of doors for me that I suspect probably would not have opened otherwise, and it's led me down quite a path since then, to where I am now, which is a whole world different from where it used to be. So at any rate, I am, hey, Beth and Lisa. Anyway, I have made, a living as a nutritional consultant, nutritional therapist, and a lot of you know that I've also done more than 20 years of work in the field of neurofeedback, working with people's brains, right? And that's been, in 20 years of doing, clinical work, I've had an opportunity to see a lot what works and what doesn't. One of the things that I learned as a neurofeedback provider is that as powerful a modality as that is, and it truly is powerful, sometimes more powerful than I'd like it to be, which, yeah, I digress. But anyway, what I discovered is that regardless of what kind of a therapeutic approach you may be doing, right? Whether it's neurofeedback, whether it's psychotherapy, whether it's acupuncture or homeopathy or whatever else, it is not going to put a nutrient there that's not there. It's not going to take away some interfering substance in your body that doesn't belong there, right? The brain and the body need certain raw materials in order to function optimally well. And that was something that was underscored for me time and time again. I found myself increasingly wanting to focus on getting people's nutritional foundations in order during the course, or during the course of the neurofeedback process, which I had an advantage as a neurofeedback provider in that I was seeing people twice a week for an hour at a time, often up to 6 months or more, and that gave me a tremendous opportunity to get to know them, to talk them through a lot of these ideas and principles, to kind of walk them through it, to convince them of the importance of doing it. And so it gave me a unique advantage, I think, over a lot of healthcare providers. They see their clients or their patients for just, a few minutes a year. The person comes in for an appointment, they run some tests, they talk about the tests, and that's the end of it. And in my work as a neurofeedback provider, it gave me an extra advantage in that I got to know people, and therefore I got to see them go through the entire process of adopting a new way of eating, of applying the things that we discussed applying, of doing the necessary things to be able to respond, not respond, but to be able to basically do something about the test results that we had done. In my work as a nutritional therapist, I also have done a lot of work with functional blood chemistry analysis, and any coursework. Once you're a nutritional therapy practitioner, once you've gone through the basic rudimentary coursework, this opens big doors for you. You have an opportunity to take a lot of different types of seminars. Oftentimes you're sitting right alongside naturopaths and chiropractors and other practitioners in learning a lot of new things. And I think that's where the rubber really ends up hitting the road. Your ability to order tests, your ability to learn to interpret those tests accurately, can really kind of blow things wide open in terms of, I've never seen greater compliance than with test results, honestly. I think that functional evaluation is a fabulous tool. You're not going to get that in any other program. And if you can layer on top of that, eventually a mastery of certain types of lab work, whether it's salivary hormone testing, adrenal ASI, kind of testing, functional blood chemistry analysis. And if you're a licensed healthcare provider, I'm here to tell you right now, you need to run and not walk and get an account with Cyrex Labs. And as a nutritional therapy practitioner, if you're not able to do that, you don't have the licensure that allows you to do that, you can still recommend that your clients do this and that they get an appropriate interpretation of those results. And I've seen that stuff transform and save lives. So, these are the things that, obviously GI testing and things along those lines, to the extent that you're able to order those kinds of tests, really, really important. How to launch your business. There's many different ways to apply an NTP, as there are people out there attempting to do it. For me, I, of course, applied it to my own private practice until that became so daunting, in tandem with, because once I published Primal Body, Primal Mind, it's like all bets were off. I had no idea that book was going to do what it did. It put me on a global stage and began to take over my life in ways that just kind of made it difficult to maintain, a full-time practice in addition to a full-time business and, full-time, interviews and writing, speaking, educating about these health-related topics. And so, basically, for me, it later became an issue of doing a lot of writing, speaking, and educating, with the knowledge and skills that I had developed, both through the NTA and through a whole lot of other experiences and a lot of other educational, sources along the way. I've got a lot of very close ties to some very cutting-edge pioneering functional medicine people, researchers, scientists in a lot of different arenas that allow me to connect some rather unique dots that otherwise might not easily get connected. Hey, Tammy. And, what you need to do is figure out what your niche is, right? I recommend that you find a niche and that you don't try to be all things to all people, that you find an area that is your strength, your expertise, your passion, if you will, and that you apply yourself to that. Whether this ends up being you, working in a supportive capacity in a doctor's office somehow, whether this is you, teaching classes or doing some other kind of online thing or writing your own books or, doing, there are a whole lot of different types of businesses that come up as a result of this. I mean, I remember just being astonished at the variety of ways out there that people were going to use their NTA training to make a living. And you can actually make a very decent living, but a lot depends on you. And again, what your areas of interest and expertise are, and how, the continuing education piece in this is going to be really, really important. I really, really urge you to avail yourself of all of the doors that open once you have that NTP, because that's going to set you apart from a whole lot of people out there. You have to realize that in conventional nutritional programs, dietitian programs, nutritionist programs, there is a fundamental kind of corporate, transnational corporate kind of basis for the nutritional recommendations that you are taught to promote. And Nutritional Therapy Association doesn't do that. And it's one of the glorious things about the NTA, that the NTA is basing its approach on these crazy things called anatomy and physiology, human evolution and ancient and traditional diets, and the work of a number of nutritional pioneers. Nobody else is doing this, right? So you will have an advantage of understanding health from a much more foundational standpoint than the average, nutritionist, licensed nutritionist or dietitian out there. People are not generally, I don't want to get into trouble for saying anything, but in my experience, people are not generally very well helped by those people. They're led down a path that is supposed to basically put them in alignment with the status quo. And as we know, the status quo is not working out so well. So, yeah, niche is definitely an important part of building a successful business in any healthcare-related field. Honestly, one problem I see when it comes to naturopaths, and I live here in Portland, Oregon, where you can't swing a dead cat without, seeing a naturopath that's hung out of shingle, because we have the National College of Naturopathic Medicine, now called the National University of Naturopathic Medicine, and a lot of people love it here, and they decide they're just going to, put down their stakes and try to make a living, and a lot of them are struggling. And in an effort to try to outdo their competition, what they do is they try to become a jack of all trades and end up being a master of none. I do homeopathy, I do Chinese medicine, Chinese herbs, I do, applied kinesiology, I do neurofeedback too, and I do, nutrition, and I do whatever. And there's no way you can be a master in all of those categories. The people that I see doing the best are the ones that had carved out a niche for themselves in a particular genre, particular area of health, and that's what they're going to do. They're just going to do men's health, or they're just going to do women's hormones, or they're just going to do, say, SIBO, right? Small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Just tipping my hat to Alison Seebecker there, a very successful naturopath. And the same thing, I think, needs to be, should be considered anyway with a nutritional therapist. Figure out what you're best at, what you love, a lot of us are driven to this genre by our own health challenges and health journey. And a lot of us become, we become wed to whatever it is that worked for us, right? And we tend to assume, that just because all we have is a hammer, everything's going to look like a nail. And that can be a little bit of a mistake to think that way. I do a little bit more broad dot connecting, but there are certain areas that, I think it really pays to focus on those things that interest you the most, and then whatever that subject matter is, cover it from as big a variety of angles as you can. Really dive in and understand it, not just from the standpoint of what helped you, but that whole topic in general, I think is a really smart thing to do. So in the process of, my sojourn here as a nutritional, therapist and somebody that's pretty well known within the, within the ancestral health and now ketogenic genres, it's been a pretty convoluted path. I have 3 books out now. Primal Body, Primal Mind is the one that sort of started it all. And then I wrote an ebook called Rethinking Fatigue, what your adrenals are really telling you and what you can do about it. And I'm here to tell you, I think as of right now, it's just about the only book on, so-called adrenals, the myth, it's truly a myth of adrenal fatigue and adrenal burnout that actually brings that whole subject matter into the 21st century and in alignment with what's the field of stress physiology and the field of immunology and autoimmunology, the science of these fields is actually saying, and then provides you with kind of step-by-step breakdown of what these different areas of what may feel like adrenal fatigue or various forms of adrenal dysregulation look like. So there's screening tools. And then I offer, once you've kind of honed down the one or more areas that it's like, oh my God, that's me, then I offer a variety of steps that you can take to address that. What other tests do you need to take? What are the natural approaches that are likeliest to be of help to you? So that book was basically designed to replace me as I started to shift a little bit away from clinical work and not be able to help everybody that was coming to me. Adrenal issues were a big complaint, and I found myself consistently frustrated by the misinformation and disinformation, even by a lot of natural healthcare providers that are out there about that topic. So I wrote the book for that. And of course I have my newest book, Primal Fat Burner, which by the way is not a weight loss book per se. It'll be people's favorite side effect, but it's really about the central importance of adopting a fat-based metabolism for optimized health, and also takes the entire subject of fat, and particularly animal fat in general, and debunks all the myths around that, and makes a rather bold hypothesis. It's both the hypothesis that the dietary fat, in particular dietary animal fat, is not only central in importance to optimizing human health, it's literally central to what made us human in the first place. And of course, I have exhaustively documented the evidence for this. I've also made an exhaustive case, I believe, for the idea that a fat-based metabolism is literally the natural metabolic state of humankind, and the most optimized natural metabolic state of humankind. So, and so that book is actually doing quite well, and was just translated into Chinese. It's like, this whole thing just seems really almost surreal to me, what's happened. For those of you that don't know, I have an online educational program that is a marvelous adjunct to what NTPs learn in the process of, once you've become an NTP. I think this would be excellent continuing education. It's literally a 52-week program where every single week you get cutting-edge, detailed, scientifically based and documented information on a whole variety of health topics that you're not likely to get. A lot of it you're not likely to get anyplace else. It was this epic thing that I created, despite of for better or worse, in terms of for me, because it was a little bit like having a term paper due every week for more than a year. But what I've created in the process is something I'm incredibly proud of. And if you go to primalrestoration.com, you can find out more about it. The NTA has accredited this, so you can get continuing education credits. And we're updating some things and making some changes to that program, by the way, which is going to significantly ratchet up the cost of the program, in part because it's going to cost me more to deliver it, but it's going to be so much better. And so if you're wanting to get in on that gravy, now's a good time to do it, because in the next month or two, we have to figure this out, but the price could even as much as double. We're trying to sort it out and make it as affordable as possible, but also make it, reasonable for us. But the people that are enrolled in that particular program, and I would say more than half of them are practitioners of some kind, and also a number of lay people that just really want to take everything they've read in my books and dive deeper. And that's Opus, by the way, my cat, my gorgeous little cat, and now that's his tail, and now that just disappeared. Okay, good. So, but it's it really delves into a whole variety of really fabulous health. There he goes again, like a duck in a shooting gallery. So I really encourage you guys to check it out. I'm really proud of that program. I'm proud of the content that I've made available. The people that are enrolled in the program love it. I also do a live Q&A on the exclusive forum for everybody enrolled in the program every single week, and I typically am able to answer everybody's questions along the way. And so, I know that those who know the NTA program well, including some of the instructor, well, one particular instructor at the NTA, a lot of you guys know Leanne from Australia. She's just like, wow, this is just like the perfect adjunct to the NTA program, because it's in alignment with a lot of the things that you learn there, but it also just adds a deeper layer of information that the basic program doesn't provide, and really can't in the context of what it is designed to do, which is give you a basic foundational understanding of nutritional therapy. So at any rate, I just want to provide that plug. Also, another plug, I'm going to be teaching my first ever live workshop at the beautiful Omega Institute in upstate New York, coming up in less than a month here. It's going to be June 3rd through 8th. And so if anybody happens to be in that neck of the woods and they have the inclination, I'm going to be hand-holding people through the process of what it takes to adopt an effective and health-optimized fat-burning metabolism, right? The title of the program is Becoming Ketogenic. So you can go to the Omega Institute website and find out more about that. I'm really excited to be doing it. It's going to be amazing. And they're going to be making, primal-oriented meals there. I'm now calling, actually, the kind of general framework in which I operate. I've been well known. In fact, I was one of the people that actually got the whole paleo movement started, unbeknownst to me. I published Primal Body, Primal Mind, and suddenly I found myself on the crest of a wave I didn't even know existed, called the paleo movement, and was suddenly being invited to come speak at UCLA and help start the Ancestral Health Society and all of that. Well, anyway, both the term paleo now and the term ketogenic have come to mean almost something different to everyone claiming to practice it. These dietary approaches have become highly commercialized. There are a lot of newcomers to the field claiming to be experts and supplying a lot of, really misinformation and disinformation, frankly, and leaving people very confused. There's a lot of predatory marketing and a lot of, frankly, stigmas and baggage getting associated with these dietary approaches just simply because of all of that. And I'm looking for a way, in looking for a way, on being tired, for starters, of trying to fit myself like a square peg into a round hole. It is something that I felt the need to basically create my own term for what it is that I talk about, and what it is that I'm specifically representing when I discuss the dietary approach I promote. And so I've literally trademarked the term primalgenic. It's not in any of my books yet, but this is where I'm going with that, because I feel the very strong need to divest myself of the commercialized approaches to these things that, frankly, I spend more time debunking, than I do, going into what's really going to help people sometimes. So anyway, so we'll be talking about this from a primalgenic perspective, So anyway, I encourage you to look into the omega thing. I also have my own personal 2-day event coming up in London in October. I'll be speaking at Ancestral Health Society Symposium at the University of Montana in Bozeman in mid-July. I'm going to be teaching a whole bunch of Australian medical practitioners and an online seminar coming up at the end of June, I think June 30th. Information about all this stuff is on my website. You can sign up at primalbody-primalmind.com. Get on my email list. I swear to you, I don't spam people. If I'm going to promote a summit, it's because I was in it, and right now, I'm only doing summits that make sense for me. I was either in a summit that I believe I had something really valuable to contribute to, or there's somebody else doing a summit that I think is genuinely unique and worthwhile and isn't just all of the same characters you see in all of them nowadays. I'm really kind of honing in on what I think is going to be most valuable to people, not what is going to, list build and all that kind of thing. I mean, obviously we need to make a living at what we do, but I predicate my work on a very essential basis of integrity that is deeply important to me, and providing genuinely useful information based on my own research, not cutting and pasting from everybody else's work. I write all my own blogs, all my own material. Nobody ghost writes for me. Everything is footnoted and heavily footnoted and heavily documented. And, I'm in this for the long haul, and I plan to be the last one left standing at the end of the day, because I just see so much that is so wrong with the field. But at any rate, difference between an NTA and an NTP, Amber. NTA stands for Nutritional Therapy Association. A NTP is the designation you get when you've graduated from the program and you are now a nutritional therapy practitioner. You have a certification as a nutritional therapy practitioner. You can write a little NTP behind your name, and that means something to people. So that's basically the difference. One is an outgrowth of the other. Question from Sarah: what are your thoughts on a cyclical keto diet? Right. So, okay, well, I can't. So you would be the perfect person to sign up for my Omega Institute thing, or take my Primal Restoration course, because I cover this stuff exhaustively. I do not buy into the concept of cyclical. To me, sometimes ketones is not the best way to get the best benefits from a fat-based ketogenic metabolism. I make like I say, rather exhaustively make the case for the idea that this was actually designed to be our naturally optimized metabolic state as a human species. And there is an enormous amount of evidence to support this that I really can't cover in this limited format. What I can tell you is that the people promoting cyclical ketosis, in my view, I think it's politics. I think it's a marketing gimmick as a way of kind of setting yourself apart or telling people what they want to hear. Look, I am not ever going to tell you something just because I think you want to hear it. I tend to kind of tell things as they are. I tell it like it is. I can be kind of blunt about it sometimes, but I never just state it as an opinion. It's not important to me to be right. It's important to me to be accurate. And that accuracy, that effort toward accuracy, is based on exhaustive research that I guarantee you most people don't put the time into that I've put into this. I've really looked at ketosis from a huge variety of angles. And, I've come to the conclusion that this is supposed to be our natural metabolic state. Now, there are right ways of doing it and wrong ways of doing it. And unfortunately, like I say, there are almost as many different keto approaches as there are people claiming to practice it. There are powders, potions, and supplements designed to basically part you from your money that are not necessary. Some of them may be useful in an extremely limited way, but they're not essential to the process. And, looking for keto guidelines has been hard. I feel your pain. I agree. I also take kind of the unique stance in my approach to keto, because most keto approaches, including oddly most paleo approaches, are very, very heavily into dairy. I'm not. I actually tend to recommend against the inclusion of dairy products unless you have you have gone through exhaustive testing through Cyrex Labs. It doesn't have to be exhaustive. The Array 4 will tell you whether you have an immune reactivity to the various different proteins in dairy. It's not all about casein, by the way. Not everybody reacts to casein. And there's alpha casein and beta casein. There's whey. There's casomorphin. There's there's milk butyrophylline. So there are different forms of dairy proteins. And here's the rub, okay? That half of everyone that has gluten immune reactivity, which, celiac disease alone, which is only 12% of the totality of what comprises gluten immune reactivity, has increased over 400% in the last 50 years alone. And this isn't due to, the popularity of testing and all of that. It's literally statistically significantly increased in the population by that much. Now we're again only talking about 12% of the totality of what comprises gluten immune reactivity, right? So we're talking about a huge, huge problem. Half of everyone that has gluten immune reactivity, and there's IgA gluten immune reactivity, and there's IgG gluten immune reactivity. Half of everybody that has it has dairy protein in some form or other as a cross reactivity, meaning that certain sensitive immune systems simply cannot tell the difference. Now these are, both gluten as a general rule, but, food sensitivities and whatever, are major impetus for the initiation and exacerbation of autoimmune disease. I'm here to tell you that autoimmunity right now is easily the greatest health burden in the world that is the least well understood, and the vast majority of people that have autoimmune processes do not know and never know, because the standard of testing in medicine is so abysmal for actually diagnosing it. That's why Cyrex is such a life-saving service, because it will catch it in its earliest stages. Now, there are food sensitivities, there are environmental sensitivities, there are a lot of things that can trigger autoimmunity. But the food sensitivity part of the equation is, I've never met a person with autoimmune that didn't have any food sensitivity issues. Gluten is the granddaddy of them all. And I'm here to tell you, too, that, you can, with respect to gluten, and I'm going off on a tangent, but with respect to gluten, that you don't even have to have an immune reactivity to gluten in order for it to completely derail your health efforts, in order for it to damage your gut, and in order for it to damage your brain. Every time you consume something with gluten, whether you are immune reactive to it or not, it stimulates the release of an enzyme called zonulin. Zonulin controls gut permeability in a way that literally opens these normally semi-permeable selective channels wide open for hours following that gluten-containing meal, and allowing things that may not be properly digested. How many of you know people that are perfect digesters of anything, right? Anything that's not perfectly digested to flow right through those normally semi-permeable channels, right into that superhighway that's your bloodstream. And by the way, zonulin also controls blood-brain barrier permeability. Furthermore, wheat germ agglutinin, which is, by the way, highest in those supposedly healthy sprouted grains, right, the properly prepared grains. Wheat germ agglutinin is really high in sprouted grains. That can cross your blood-brain barrier all on its own, attach itself to your myelin, and block nerve growth factor, effectively preventing your brain from being able to repair itself, leading to damage. So it's literally not a health food for anybody. There's nobody wandering around with a gluten deficiency, and it's much more likely to compromise than it is to support your optimal health. And I'm here to tell you, we're living in a world where we cannot afford, we don't have the wiggle room that our prehistoric ancestors had. We're not living in Weston Price's time anymore, okay? One of the chapters in my book, Primal Body, Primal Mind, asks the question of, what generation of Pottinger's cat are you, right? So we need to look at this stuff, honestly. And, I take an optimized approach to health, not in an effort to be extreme, but because we're living in extreme times, right? It's not me that's being extreme. A lot of what I recommend is something that would have been a matter of course for our prehistoric ancestors. They wouldn't have had to learn about any of this. It would have just come naturally to them. But nowadays, we don't have the wiggle room even of our great-grandparents, our grandparents, or even our parents for that matter. One of the things that I like to point out is that we are wired as, a species that evolved in the wild to be responsive to what's the word? To threats that are very easy for us to perceive, right? Tangible threats. In other words, a saber-toothed tiger jumps out from behind a bush and comes after you. That's pretty tangible. Or, you're getting trampled by a cantankerous woolly mammoth. That's pretty tangible. Or maybe there's a warring tribe or a major storm, a volcanic eruption, or some big event like that. We are wired for being alert to those things, recognizing them as threats, and knowing that we need to take steps to do something about that, to protect ourselves. In modern times, we are now living in comfortable climate-controlled environments, right? And we basically don't have to take, more than 2 steps in any given direction to be able to grab a hold of something, that we want to think of as food, or maybe a food-like substance, and put that in our mouths, and whatever else. So we don't experience the kind of famine that our prehistoric ancestors also, were alert to being concerned about, even though we're probably far more nutrient deprived than they ever were. The things that threaten us most today are effectively invisible to our immediate senses, right? We have contaminants in our air, water, and food supply that boggle the imagination. Babies are being born with 200 toxic chemicals in their umbilical blood. It's insane. We have EMF pollution. We have radiation contamination. Don't get me started on that topic. We have GMOs. We have these, I'd say, misanthropic, sociopaths now running transnational corporations and things like Codex Alimentarius that are taking away our rights to even be able to control our own food supply, and our supplements and things like that. And because these things are normally just sort of invisible to us as we go through the course of our day, we think we're actually doing pretty well. We're all, thinking that we're sitting in a hot tub in Vegas when we're really basically, the proverbial boiling frogs, right? Sitting there with the flesh falling off of our bones and thinking we have it pretty good because we've got Monday Night Football and Dancing with the Stars. So I'm kind of, if there's one supplement I take every day of the week and that I recommend that you take every day of the week, it's the proverbial red pill. We can't afford to be blind to what is happening in our world, happening to our food supply. To some degree, I think we need to become better educated about the politics behind all of this. And I hate politics, and I'm finding myself being dragged into it kicking and screaming because there's really no other choice if we want to maintain control of our health, maintain control of our food supply, maintain control of our own bodies, for crying out loud. So I see somebody says they only do raw dairy. Guess what? Once you have an immune reactivity to dairy, doesn't matter if it's raw or pasteurized, doesn't matter if it's A1 or A2 allele dairy, it doesn't matter if it's grass-fed or grain-fed. Once your immune system is sensitized to dairy protein as an immune reactivity, you're done with it for the rest of your life. That's a permanent sensitivity. And raw dairy is not going to save you. I know there's a lot of lore around this, and there's a lot of solid research around dairy. I'm friends with Mark McAfee. I know we both share on the same board of the Hunt Gather Grow Foundation. I was recently appointed the vice president, by the way, of the Hunt Gather Grow Foundation, which is undergoing some major transformations right now that are actually going to be pretty newsworthy in the next couple of months, probably. So stay tuned for that. I really urge you guys to join our organization. Our tagline is bringing the real food communities together, working together as a cohesive whole, as opposed to, nitpicking at each other because, oh, you're paleo, no, you're Weston Price, you're, this or that. We're bringing everybody to the table, and everybody gets a voice, and we're focused on science, not on personality cults or not on any one particular agenda, other than furthering the cause of food freedom, right? And the real food movement. And there are legitimate benefits to be gotten from raw dairy in people who can tolerate it well. I want to urge you guys again, just to go back to that because it keeps coming up, that when I did my Cyrex testing, the only dairy I was doing was raw butter, raw cream from all grass-fed stuff. Goat milk cheese, sheep milk cheese, yes, these count, by the way, and the occasional raw, really high-quality grass-fed, cow cheese. And I thought, this is as clean as it gets. Dairy is not an issue for me. I love it, whatever. I lit up like a Christmas tree for being immune reactive to literally every form of dairy protein that there was. Every single one. And it's literally across reactivity for me with gluten, and I will never consume dairy again as long as I live, no matter what form of dairy it's in. There is one exception, Pure Indian Foods, and no, I don't have financial ties to them. Pure Indian Foods has, among all of the ghee products that they sell, they have a cultured ghee, specifically cultured ghee. And Sandeep Agarwal, he and his family, they've been making ghee since the 1800s. But what he's done that's unique with this particular ghee is that the process of culturing it and their particular process of culturing it literally removes all traces of dairy protein from the final product, so that it is just the fat fraction. And normally in fat there is milk butyrophilin, which is the protein that comprises the membrane surrounding a fat globule. Even that is broken up and removed from the final cultured ghee product. So I have that in my home. That is the only dairy product in my home. It's a grass-fed organic cultured ghee. It's better tasting than any other ghee out there as far as I'm concerned. I think it's better tasting than the other ghees that Pure Indian Foods makes. So that's it. That's it. And again, I would have bet money that dairy wasn't going to be a problem for me. I was shocked to see that it was. So you can't rely on the idea that you don't notice anything when you consume and therefore it's okay for you. I'm here to tell you cannot rely on that. You can only really confirm this through testing, and testing following exposure to dairy products. Then you go to Cyrex and you test, and if you show up negative for all the dairy proteins, you're not immune reactive to them. Cyrex Labs, okay, is the lab. It's the only lab in the world, literally the only lab in the world, okay? Again, I have no financial ties, but they're the only ones doing accurate and comprehensive immunologic testing. And they have a huge array of tests nobody else has. Their testing is proprietary. Nobody else in the world has the exact kind of testing they do. It was painstakingly developed by Dr. Risto Vajdani, who, by the way, was the immunologist, the PhD immunologist researcher who literally first discovered the phenomenon of food sensitivity issues. This was the guy who blew the whistle on silicone breast implants years ago. He is, arguably in the top 5 of all immunologists on the planet. And he helped develop their testing. And I know Aristo Vajdani very, very well. I consider him a good friend. I don't remember the last time I met a researcher with that level of integrity. I mean, I do know others that have really, really high integrity, but he is meticulous and he's a stickler for details in a way I've just never seen in the industry. Literally, the test results come to within 1 to 2 standards of deviation of sensitivity, of accuracy. That's unheard of in the testing world. So all of the popular food sensitivity tests, it's anybody's guess as to whether your positive or negative was accurate. That's literally how bad it is out there. The testing standards are horrible in this arena. Cyrex is the only one that's going to give you an accurate result. And if you test negative, Cyrex Labs Array 4 is the one that really covers all the details about dairy the most effectively. that particular test is actually tests 28 different compounds, 13 of which are known cross-reactive compounds with gluten. And it's that particular array is focused on the foods that people tend to overconsume on a gluten-free diet and whether or not any of those are problematic for you. So that's the nature of that test. But if you test negative, I totally hate you because I miss butter and cream and cheese and all of those things. But I'm here to tell you there is life after dairy if it doesn't work out for you. And you know, I'm fine. You know, I'm more than fine actually without it. So at any rate, nobody has a dairy deficiency, right? Raw pasture-fed dairy from, you know, A2 allele cows of uncompromising, you know, quality and all that kind of thing can be medicinal for people. The colostrum can be enormously medicinal. But it is, but it's not, that's one of those things that, again, unless I know somebody has been tested in a way that shows that they're not reactive, I just recommend as a general course of preventative measure to just avoid it. Just avoid it. So that's my point of view, and that's very different from a lot of people in the ketogenic genre who are promoting dairy products left and right. I consider that problematic, right? So at any rate, yeah, so I'd been covering a whole bunch of stuff here. I don't even know how much time we've been on. Anybody know how much time we've been on? I'm just sort of going. You know, you just sort of put the coin in, right? And then that might, you know. So I hope that all of this has been really helpful to you. I'm guessing that we've probably gone over time. I know this was originally supposed to be 30 minutes. We're probably going closer to 60. Yeah, thanks, Lisa. I appreciate that. So I should probably wrap this up for now. If you're thinking about doing the NTA program, I encourage you to run and walk and just do it. Even if it's for your own private education, for your family and your kids. I think, you know, the NTC program, which is a nutritional therapy coach, is for people that are not necessarily looking to become practitioners, but just basically want to be able to, you know, coach their own friends and family and do their own thing. Now, somebody at the NTA can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's along those lines. Look, we inhabit this machine, right? It only makes sense that we should be able to understand how to optimally take care of it. And the only possible way to do that is by getting your foundation straight. You know, the thing of it is there is one myth I really want to shatter right now, and in fact I don't know that the NTA would necessarily agree with me. I will make the case here, because there's a popular mantra of the idea that everybody's different. I think my hair curls every time, and not in a good way, every time I hear somebody say that. I consider that nutritional politics. Look, what defines us as human beings is not those things that are different between us, but those things that we share in common, right? We all have the same fundamental evolutionary history. We all have the same basic type of organs and tissues. We all have the same, you know, type of brain. Some work better than others. I won't name names. You know, we have the same hormones, neurotransmitters. We all have the same, you know, range of blood pH, you know, between 7.35 or 7.45 or else, right? We are much more alike than we are unalike. Yes, we all have fingerprints, right? And our fingerprints are all different, but we all have fingers. And that's the thing to keep in mind, is that foundationally and fundamentally, I do make the case that there is a universally optimal foundational human diet. And, you know, Weston Price actually also pointed this out without a lot of his biggest fans even realizing it. That, you know, of course, Price covered so many different traditional and primitive cultures, what he called primitive, all over the world, right? He looked at all these different diets under all these different climatic conditions and found people were eating all these different things. And wherever people were eating the diet that was true to their traditions, right? That was true to their indigenous culture or whatever else. Those are the people that seemed to do the best and seemed to be freest from disease. And so what a lot of people take away from Price's work, and the popular thing to take away from Price's work is, just eat real food and it's all good. And like I point out, we don't live in Weston Price's time anymore. But there was an important question that he asked and was able to answer that oftentimes gets forgotten. And that question is, what did all of the healthiest people groups that I studied, what did they all have in common, right? There were two things that they all had in common. Number one, they all consumed as many animal source foods as were available to them. The greater variety of animal source foods available, generally the better and healthier these cultures were, people within these cultures. Number two, in every single one of these cultures, the food that was considered the most important, the most venerated, the most sought after were the foods that were highest in fat and fat-soluble nutrients. And we're talking from animal source foods. And to my mind, what we have there is a foundational substrate upon which other nuance can be layered, right? And so all of these cultures having that foundation in place, the degree to which those foundations were in place, may have allowed them to tolerate other foods that may not have necessarily been optimal for their health, right? We're also talking about so many generations ago that they didn't have the genomic compromise that we have today. They didn't have the toxic compromise in our everyday environment that we have today. We are living in an infinitely more challenging and dangerous world than our prehistoric ancestors ever could have fathomed. And we have far less wiggle room than they did, than Weston Price and people in his time period did. And like I say, than even our great-grandparents, grandparents, or parents did. And so for us, foundations become so much more important. Those foundations that we all have in common as human beings become so much more important. There is no such thing as, well, vegetarianism or veganism is better for this person, and a paleo diet's better for this person. There is no such thing. There's no evidence for this in our physiological makeup or anywhere in the fossil record. We have a hydrochloric acid-based digestive system, not a fermentative-based digestive system. The fermentative portion of our digestive system only occupies about 20% of our gut, which is nowhere near enough to be able to supply the nutrients that we need from an exclusively plant-based diet. We can't do it. And I could take on the subject of vegetarianism and veganism all day, and I would do it with a respectful tone, but it's entirely debunkable from the standpoint of science and human evolution and human physiology. As human beings, again, we are more alike than unalike, and we need to remember that. The idea that we're all different, we all share the same foundational needs and requirements, and I believe also from a macronutrient perspective. However, what layers on top of that is our bioindividuality. But bioindividuality is the nuance. It's nuance that layers on top of those foundations. And that, yes, based on whatever symptoms or conditions you might have as an individual, what your particular nutritional deficiencies might happen to be, what you tolerate, etc. Those are all important, but they're not foundational. Okay, and so that's the difference, and that's something that I really am intent on making the case for, because there are more nutritional politicians in the health genre nowadays than there is woodwork for them to ooze out of. And I will never, ever be one of them. Not ever. I hope you guys... That's right, Gail. All right, Gail gets it. That's cool. I think that we've probably Well, we haven't covered everything I could cover. You know, I have 52 weeks worth of material in my Primal Restoration program along, and even that is kind of the tip of the iceberg of information that I feel like I have to offer of everything that I've researched and uncovered over the years. But again, if I don't have supportive evidence to make a claim, I'm not going to make it just because I think something might be true. So what you hear from me is not just my opinions. They're based on something solid. And as I said before, it's not important to me to be right. It's important for me to be accurate and to not do a disservice to people that are entrusting me with, you know, with information regarding the most precious commodity they've got, which is their health. And again, I greatly appreciate everything the Nutritional Therapy Association is doing. I know that they're undergoing some evolutions of their own right now, and that's very exciting. You know, get in on the gravy. You know, take the program. You will never, I guarantee you will never ever regret it. And, you know, there is never anyone in this world that will ever care more about your health than you. And so it makes sense to do what it takes to understand, you know, this machine that we inhabit as thoroughly as we're capable of doing. Because I'm here to tell you that, you know, you're not going to be rescued by the mainstream medical industry, which is not paid for its quality of care, but for its volume of service, and is funded by pharmacologic interests, which are killing far more people, you know, than curing, frankly, because we all know that pharmaceuticals don't generally cure anything. They're designed to mask symptoms of disease. So, at any rate, the only way we get through this most challenging of time periods in our, you know, in our particular place in evolutionary history here, the only way we get through these modern times is by taking control of this machine that we inhabit and nurturing it. You know, right now the number one cause of bankruptcy in the United States is a bad diagnosis. And once that happens, it becomes a lot harder to fix something once it's broken. And we're all not diagnosed with something until the day we are. That is not the time to start, right? As long as you're above ground, there's always hope. But the better time to start is when you still, you know, have, you know, these faculties intact, and when this is working well. Keeping it working well is easier than fixing it once it's broken. And I think the NTA offers some very good basic tools with which to do that. And using those basic tools and using the NTP that you get as a result of that program can lead you on to other, you know, in-depth education that you otherwise wouldn't have access to, that can truly give you an expertise in the area of your health and the health of those you want, that you love, and that you want to help. And so, again, nobody's coming to save us, folks. You know, we're the ones we've been waiting for. And so taking responsibility and developing our own measure of expertise is the best insurance we have against everything that's challenging us in our modern world. So I thank you for your time and attention. Yes, I also want to offer a plug for a new documentary that, you know, that I'm in, that I think, I mean, whole personal bias put aside because I'm in it, it's easily the best of the food documentaries out there. It's called The Magic Pill, and there's Opus again, and you know, yes, I'm in it. I'm actually in it a fair amount. And it's not just a bunch of experts sitting around behind their desks and spewing off information, but it also tells some very real stories about very real people with very real health challenges. So you'll want to keep a box of Kleenex handy because it's really moving. It is just a superbly done documentary. It's, you know, it's got close to, I think, over 100 or close to 100 5-star reviews right now on Amazon, but it's also just released on Netflix. It's on DVD, finally got released. It's on iTunes. it's fabulous. So I urge you guys to all watch it. All right, Lily watched it 3 times. Very cool. Yes. And thanks, Lisa, for reminding me to mention the magic pill. I almost forgot. I mean, there's so many things to mention. It's kind of crazy making. Look up the Hunt Gather Growth Foundation. Really want to join up with that, and let's form a unified front against the against the motivations of industry to be able to take control of our food supply and food freedom. I encourage you to look up my own educational program, Primal Restoration. You can go to primalrestoration.com for that. Look up my upcoming 5-day live workshop at the Omega Institute. Anybody that signs up for that, I mean, we're going to have a lot of one-on-one time available time to get to know each other, and that's going to be a total, hands-on and tons of education in the area of how to adopt and optimize fat-based metabolism. All this good stuff. So thank you. And thank you to the NTA for all the good things I've gotten, from you over the years. And I expect we'll continue to get from you in the future, and hoping to help you out with some of those new modules and all that good stuff. So thank you guys. Thank you so much. Yes, health is in fact in our hands. It better be. We don't want to put it in the hands of people whose best interests may not lie with your own personal interests, but instead may lie with profit. Okay, words to live by. Thanks, CJ. Thanks, NTA. Thanks, everybody. Hopefully, see you, talk to you soon.